Hello and welcome to today's webinar on post-quantum security for IoT on STM32 MCUs and MPUs. Just a couple quick logistical notes before we get started. We will be providing a link to the recorded video and slide presentation following the event. And the audience is in listen-only mode, so if you have a question at any time during the presentation, please submit it in the moderated chat, and we will try to answer some questions potentially in real time. Otherwise, we'll cover them during the Q&A at the end of the presentation and demo. Next slide. Okay, let's meet our presenters for today and take a quick look at the agenda. My name is 𝗨𝘀𝗶𝗴, and I'm the SVP of Business Development at Quantropi. Quantropi is headquartered in Ottawa, Canada, and we are thrilled to be a featured ST partner for post-quantum security. We are joined by Mike Redding, the Quantropi CTO, and Mena Roumbakis, who is the product marketing engineer at ST. During the course of today's webinar, Mena will start with a quick primer on the STM32 portfolio and the STM32CubeMX solution. Then we're going to dive into the background on post-quantum security, Quantropi's QiSpace platform, including a demo covering how you can get access to the Quantropi PQC for IoT SDK for free right now today from your STM32 project. And then finally, we'll talk about some other IoT solutions and licensing. So without further ado, let's get started with Mena.
Hi, everyone. As Jay said, I'm a STM32 product marketing engineer. I help support all of the security features for our products here in North America. And here we can see the full STM32 portfolio ranging from our lowest cost microcontrollers and low power to the wireless devices all the way up to the high performance and MPU products. We highlight a few of the newer ones in yellow, such as the U0 and WBA in the bottom. On the top right, the newest device is the STM32 MP2, and we have the STM32 N6 that's coming out soon. But then also highlighted in blue here, we can see the platforms where the QiSpace security platform has already been ported to on devices like the U5, H7, and MP1, in addition to the F4. Obviously, the QiSpace platform can work on other devices, but we wanted to really give you an overview of the full STM32 portfolio that we can see here. And of course, all of these devices are on our rolling 10-year longevity program. If you want to go to the next slide. And then the only other slide from me really is the STM32CubeMX slide, and you'll see why when I pass this back to our friends at Quantropi. They've now implemented the expansion pack here in the CubeMX tool. Hopefully you're already familiar with it. We do have a very large development base around this product. But in a nutshell, it helps you select either the microcontroller, an eval board, or a software example. We have a very fully featured pinout configuration. In addition to that, we can do the clock tree initialization and peripheral configuration. It's not limited to just the peripherals you see there on the bottom left, but every peripheral on the device. And then key to this talk here is the software components and the parameters. We can add external software packages to this ecosystem to help enable your feature set. We do also have some additional development tools like a low power background autonomous mode for our low power devices, the code generation, which we can target multiple IDEs for, and then also a very accurate power consumption calculator. All of this is really baked into one single easy to use tool. And thanks to our made for STM32, we can also add partner ecosystem tools to this as well, which Quantropi will expand on further. With that, I can pass it back to you, Jay.
Great. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to cover just some really quick background to level set on this thing called post-quantum security and the migration to post-quantum security. The process to prepare for this migration to stronger encryption algorithms that can withstand quantum computing attacks has actually been in the works all the way back until 2016. That's when the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, commonly called NIST, published their initial report identifying this future threat for algorithms being compromised. And they began the process to select new encryption algorithms that would be safe against quantum and now quantum and AI attacks. The most immediate threat was to the common asymmetric encryption algorithms we use every day, like RSA and elliptic curve. These are used in digital signature schemes for firmware updates. and all across common network protocols like TLS. Let's go to the next slide. So the question is where we are today. After that 8-year process, just a couple of months ago, the first new digital signature and key exchange algorithms were finalized by NIST. And so for key exchange, that algorithm is called 𝗂𝗀𝗄𝗃. It was originally called Kyber. If you hear that name or have heard that name, now it's known as 𝗂𝗀𝗃 as the final standard. And for digital signature, the name is MLDSA. It was originally called dilithium. And they also finalized a second algorithm called SLH-DSA, which is called, or was formerly called, Sphinx Plus. NIST had also previously approved a couple of hash-based signature schemes that are also noted here. Over time, additional algorithms are also anticipated to be approved by NIST, mostly because there's still a general concern about the long-term viability of these encryption algorithms, given how fast quantum and AI technology is advancing. And so unfortunately, those capabilities can be used to break encryption. And so we want to have a lot of choices available in case that happens. And so expect over the next years, literally, for additional algorithms to be finalized by NIST. And the industry is calling this process being crypto agile, having crypto agility, so that in your application, if need be, you're able to change from one encryption algorithm to a different one very quickly. Let's go to the next slide. So I want to highlight 2 quick points on this timeline slide. The first one is that a couple of years ago, major governments in both the US and EU passed legislation. And that legislation basically says the government will begin to purchase post-quantum secure solutions, and the timeline, the clock on that mandate is now in motion because the standards have been approved. And so if you sell anything to the government in the EU or in the US or even Canada and most other countries have similar legislation, you definitely want to be aware of this, because there's a point in time where the government will only buy solutions that are post-quantum secure. Now, obviously, that's also going to drive a lot of activity in the commercial industry, which we'll talk about. But the second thing I want to highlight on this slide is it's still going to take a little bit of time yet to have FIPS certificates for these new solutions that include post-quantum security. The testing is available now, but the process to get products through the testing and certificate issuance is expected to take at least until 2025. And if you understand how FIPS works, everything that uses a standard encryption algorithm has to have a FIPS certificate or can have a FIPS certificate. So there's a very long list of products that will be FIPS certified, including Quantropi's own libraries. It's just going to take a little bit of time for that to happen. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is the question, as you can imagine, that we get asked all the time. Right? Fantastic. So I've got to do this migration, but when do I really need to be worried about this? When is it that, the encryption algorithms are going to be compromised? And it's a great question. And you'll see or hear in the news estimates that go from a couple of years on the short term, all the way up to decades on the long term for what this timeline looks like. What I can tell you is the best hard data analysis we've seen was actually published by McKinsey just a couple of months ago. Again, you'll get this in the slide deck and you can look at the source material. But this graph for RSA 2048 plots how quickly quantum computing capability is advancing over time, historically, what it's projected to do in the future, and how much of this capability do you need to break encryption. And McKinsey's estimate is basically in the gray box. So they say in the near term, their estimate is as early as 2027, and the longer term range goes out to 2036. Now, when we talk to customers, we tell them they should be prepared for the near term estimate. And here's a couple of reasons why. Quantum and AI is getting billions and billions of R&D dollars poured into it more and more every day. And these are two of the core capabilities that will also be involved in breaking encryption. And so as that R&D money advances those capabilities, we think this timeline is going to not only get more likely, but also, right, more near term. If you tried to make this prediction 2 years ago, you probably wouldn't have seen anybody just 24 months ago that said, look, the near term estimate is 2027. Most folks would have quoted you a number in the 2030s or the 2040s. And so that's just kind of an anecdotal indication of how quickly these capabilities are advancing and what that's doing to this time frame. So, I encourage you to get, educated on this topic, and you can kind of make your own decision on what you believe this time frame looks like. But I highly recommend you look at this McKinsey report because it was the best hard data analysis that we've seen. Let's go to the next slide. So if McKinsey's kind of the, quantitative hard data side, let's talk about qualitative for just a second, because this is another indication of this transition and how quickly this transition is occurring. And you really don't need to look any further than big tech to get that data point. So every company on this list, and this is just a fraction of them that have made announcements, has already released major products that include post-quantum security. One of the more prevalent ones that a lot of people heard about was earlier this year with Apple. And so if you use iMessage on your Apple phone, a year ago, that was protected by classic security. And as of earlier this year, that's now protected by post-quantum security for every single message you send as an iMessage on your iPhone. So, for the most part, a lot of these big tech migrations will happen, seamlessly under the covers, and many of these have. But there's also going to be other instances, and particularly in IoT, where there's, a lot more potentially complicating that migration, which we will begin to talk about here in just a couple of minutes. We think the clear kind of takeaway here is the viewpoint that all of these guys have is we may not know exactly when that time period is going to be for when encryption is compromised, but clearly they all thought the time to act was sooner rather than later. And they've already, completed this migration for some of their major products. A whole lot more work that still has to happen in industry and technology, and you'll see that continuing to occur over the next years, if not decade or more. All right, let's go to the next slide. So everything that I gave you in that quick primer was really focused on the encryption algorithms themselves. But I wanted to take a quick second and talk about another threat vector that is rapidly emerging, and that's around the quality of the random number generation. So every encryption key starts with a random number seed that typically you get from the operating system on the device. Now, with tools like AI, if I can do some, pattern matching and analysis on those random number seeds, I can actually discern the pattern that's being used, the algorithm that's behind creating that random number, because they are all algorithmic to a large extent. And if I'm able to do that, then I can predict the next random number seed that's going to get generated, ergo, I can compromise the encryption. And so on the screen here are some prominent examples of where weak random number generation has led to significant compromises. The first little graphic you see on the far left was actually a study done on breaking AES 256-bit encryption keys. And there's a ratio that essentially computes for AES 256 the quality of each one of those bits of random number in the key. And if you don't have at least 220 out of 256, or 85% as a minimum, that key is almost instantly compromisable. So two significant takeaways around this topic are, number one, in the IoT space, you have a lot of devices that are resource constrained, and in general, resource constrained devices will produce weaker random number seeds. So it's something that you really have to pay attention to. And then the second takeaway is that the mitigation for this is to use something that has a much better quality source of randomness. And there are a couple of ways to do that, and Mike's going to talk about that as we get into the platform overview and the QiSpace solution overview as well. So why don't we transition now to that overview, and I'm going to turn things over to Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Jay. So as Jay introduced me at the beginning, I'm Mike Rennie, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Quantropi, and I'll talk a little bit about the solution we've packaged up and made available through the STM32 platform. And so to start off with, as an overarching solution, our product is QiSpace. It's a platform, software platform product, and it really delivers the three cryptographic fundamentals needed for complete cryptographic security. So kind of the three legs of the stool, which is an asymmetric suite that provides that crypto agility Jay was talking about, and we'll double click on that in a second. We also offer quantum algorithms for symmetric encryption, so to protect data in motion and data at rest. And then last but not least, as Jay just highlighted, the ability to generate and distribute strong random numbers to anywhere they're needed in the core, at the edge, so that you always start with a strong random number, because what's the point of a strong lock if you have a weak key? And just because, you know, it's technology, we have to have clever marketing names within QiSpace. We have, and I want to bring these out up front just in case I use them, just casually, and you're like, what are you talking about? Mask is our asymmetric suite, which includes key exchange, digital signature, and supports zero knowledge proof. Keep is our symmetric algorithm, and then secure is our strong random number generation and distribution product. And so those are the three building blocks that go to those three suites that go to those three cryptographic fundamentals. And so to talk a little bit about packaging, especially for IoT, for running on the STM32 MCUs and MPUs, we have two packages. We have the IoT SDK baseline, and that's the free version that's available right now. And we'll actually show that to you in a few minutes. That's in the CubeMX environment. And I'll highlight this in a moment. But where we're making ML-Chem and ML-DSA, two of the brand new NIST standards, available at three security levels: NIST level 1, NIST level 3, and NIST level 5. And if you're not familiar with that, those are variable security levels, because again, it's not all one size fits all. They have different resource requirements, but NIST L1 or level 1 is considered minimum viable or minimum required for post-quantum security, and level 5 being the max, or max as commonly measured. And so a couple different choices, so you can dial up, dial down according to your security needs and your resources available. Importantly, NIST level 1 is the floor that you want to achieve post-quantum security per the EU and US government laws that were passed. And we also make available an OpenSSL 3.x provider, which you can run on the x86 side, on the server side, because like TLS, you need a client and a server. You need two hands to clap when you're communicating. And so we provide also a OpenSSL provider that snaps right into your existing x86 platforms. And that's currently GA. You'll see in a second, you can download it and start working with it this afternoon if you see fit. And of course, in the spirit of crypto agility, we're going to continue to bring out new features, including more coverage of, I'll call it classic algorithms. So it's all one package. So again, you can migrate within one product family and not have to Frankenstein it from a number of vendors. We're also going to hybridize this as a more advanced concept where we take a classic and a post-quantum and mash them up. That's something in particular for the EU, like German BSI and others have had a particular focus on. So again, for folks that are thinking international, we want to give you complete coverage. And one of the things that we're working on and about to release is full integration with Mbed TLS, so that again, it becomes a very easy point, click and ship upgrade to the protocols you're already using. We offer both the free binary distribution, but then with paid options, which Jay will talk about a little bit later. So that's the baseline package. And then the premium, which of course is a superset there, in addition to the NIST standard, we also offer a few novel algorithms from Quantropi that perform the same functions, but have a different performance characteristic. And that's what I'll spend a few minutes on as we go forward. Then we also, that's where we include our quantum algorithm for symmetric and our random number generator. And again, I'll give you some speeds and feeds to give you, again, a choice of why you might consider those for your specific security needs. And again, as always, we'll have a number of releases, but release version 1 is GA right now and available. In fact, Brenda, my colleague, is going to demonstrate this release in a few minutes. So I've alluded to this, but I will hit it hard with some facts. The challenge with IoT and edge devices, resource constrained, is that these new post-quantum algorithms, generally speaking, are going to require more system resources than we've seen in the past for the classic algorithms they're meant to replace. And in some cases, especially for brownfield implementations, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. As you try to upgrade devices in the field already, they may or may not be suitable for these algorithms. And so we wanted to make sure you always had an upgrade path for your current projects, let alone future products, where you can then potentially upgrade to a stronger processor, as Mena already talked about some of the new ones coming out from STM. And so to show you some numbers that give you this baseline, here we're looking at sizes. And what's interesting in bytes is if you're used to a digital signature when you're signing a message as part of signing a certificate, signing firmware for a bootloader with RSA 2048, the current gold standard, that signature size is typically 256 bytes. You can see that at NIST level 1 with MLDSA, it jumps almost 10x. And with NIST level 5, it's almost 20x bigger signature per signing. And so that's significant, especially when you start thinking about certificate authorities and multiple certificates. And we'll see X509 certificate sizes in a second. That starts to add up quickly. And that's where our Quantropi novel digital signature algorithm offers a size that's on par with the current standard. So that gives you some flexibility and choice. And the same thing is actually when you look at when you do key exchange at the beginning of, say, a TLS handshake, once again, at NIST level 5, we're seeing, an 8x increase in the message size. And in fact, if you read the stuff about Apple and JMessage, iMessage, they actually had to do some workarounds because of the key exchange increase. And then I mentioned X509 certificate sizes. Again, you can start to see that for a typical X509 certificate, again, about a 10x increase in size. And maybe that's not a big deal, but if you're managing a lot of certificates, it can start to add up quickly. And again, the Quantropi novel algorithm gives you some flexibility and some choices to make it fit your project needs. And memory, that was just file size and signature size. Then you start to memory utilization. You can see that MLDSA, and this is from literature that you can find on, from different scientific and standards bodies, you can start to see that current implementations of MLDSA require a significant, almost 52K of RAM to run. If you have a 64K processor, that starts to be problematic. And in some cases, in this level 5, over 122K of RAM. And you can see similar thing on key exchange. Again, a significant increase in memory utilization. So these are trade-offs you'll have to balance out, and that's why we want to give you lots of choice. And finally, some performance stats in terms of processing, sign and verify, and encapsulate and decapsulate, the things you'll typically do as part of every TLS session. Again, dramatic increases over the current performance, and that's where you're going to think about it. And this is on an M7. On an M4, if you have a security requirement for NIST level 5, you'll actually find that you can't use the NIST standards at NIST level 5 on a Cortex M4. There's just not enough capability. And so that's, a dramatic consideration, especially if you, again, have these devices already fielded and you want to upgrade them. So switching from the asymmetric to symmetric performance, AES-256 is absolutely the gold standard. But when performance and battery and latency, and you can start thinking about sensors that are battery powered out in the field, satellite communications, other disconnected or non-powered solutions, this is where our KEEP algorithm steps in and has been benchmarked to run up to 18 times faster using 90% less power, but also with key flexibility up to a 32,000 bit key, but with no performance trade-off and a very small footprint. So cheap and cheerful, really resource constrained, but requiring hardened security. The symmetric algorithm is a very intriguing performance. And in fact, this was a benchmark we did with a major industrial controller manufacturer, where they were looking at, in this case, it happened to be a Raspberry Pi embedded device, but they wanted to benchmark it. And there they saw, 14 times performance on encrypt and 12 times performance just about on decrypt. And that was important to them because, again, of the power available to the field. And then to round it out and to go to all three legs of the stool, Jay mentioned this idea of strong random numbers. And one of the things, especially on the IoT edge, where our secure algorithm can be used to take what RNG, either it's a hardware RNG from the MCU itself, or if there is no hardware RNG, if you just have a software PRNG, we can basically condition it. And the great news is that this is compliant with NIST SP 800-90B. So a lot of letters and numbers there, but that's a certification for random number generation where we can condition the original source with this algorithm, and as a result, come up with a very clean, very strong random number that you can use with confidence for your cryptographic key generation. And we think that again gives, especially for offline IoT devices, a way to really harden your cryptographic keys for use with whichever algorithms you select. So that's a lot of the background. Now we've figured it makes sense to bring it to life, both with a live demo to show you how easy it is to build a project in the CubeMX and Cube IDE, but also to then talk about a few of the potential deployment patterns you might consider adopting some of these new algorithms and capabilities. So that's what we thought we'd walk it through to make this kind of bring it to life and news you can use. And so importantly, I want to first demo our package as available through the STM32CubeMX environment. And the whole idea is that, as Mena pointed out at the beginning, we can support the Cortex M4, M33, M7, A7 architectures. Those have already been ported. And if you have a different architecture, we can absolutely port to that because all of our code is written in ANSI C for fast and easy portability. And importantly, in both our base and premium packages, we include, of course, all the normal README and documentation, but we also include example source code so you can see that and exercise these algorithms and see how to implement them yourselves. And so this is just a screenshot. If you go into CubeMX right now and do a refresh, you'll see the Quantropi tab now appears, which is very exciting. And you can then select this base package just by highlighting it and then install it. And voila, you now have it in your environment. And that's, again, the base ML Chem and ML DSA. Alternatively, You can load it. The CubeMX environment gives you multiple ways to load it. You can download it directly, as I just mentioned, or you can do it from the URL that you see on the screen, or you can download it and load it from the local file system. So lots of ways to get it loaded up into your working environment. But now what I'm going to do is, rather than just talk about it in theory, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, who's one of our embedded developers, Brenda. So she's an active practitioner of software development on the STM environment, and she's going to show you how you can build and test the simple demo on, I think it's going to be the U585 from STMicro, and using our premium package to exercise the Quantropi digital signature and key exchange mechanism. So Brenda, I'm going to let you take over.
Thank you, Mike. Let me share my screen. So here I'm going to show you how to add the premium package, and we will generate the code for the STM32 IDE. So let me start the video. Here you can install the premium package from your local. Just to point to where the pack file you will receive is, and you can install it. It will, couple of dialogues will pop up, and you can agree to them. So this is for premium, as I mentioned, and that is our release 1.9.3. And now I will create a new project to use that package. I'm going to use the STM32CubeMX board. So I'm going to select that from the board selector here. I will select the board and start the project. It is going to ask me if I want to initialize all peripheral in the default mode. I agree, and I don't want to use the trusted zone as well, so I clicked without. And now this is going to generate the IOC file for us and start the rendering for us. So now we have the project ready here, and I'm going to add the software pack from the software pack drop-down menu. I'm going to go down to the Quantropi, and as the U585 is MCU, I'm going to select the MCU library and include the sample and include file there. It will take a second to load the package there. Then from the left side menu, I'm going to select the config for my package. So I'm going to select the MCU mode, sample, and include package to include the package. Now I'm going to go to the project manager. I'm going to give my project a name. And I just need to make sure the location of the project is provided as well. And I want to generate the project for STM32Cube IDE, so I will select that. And if you have not installed the firmware package, so when you select the generate code, it will ask you for installing the firmware package for the first time. And now it started generating the user code for STM32Cube IDE. So it will prompt me for opening the project. So I'm going to open the project. It will open the project in the STM32Cube IDE itself. I'm just making sure my workspace is correct. So it open up the IDE. And it's going to import that project for me in the IDE itself. So we have the project loaded here. Now to run the digital signature and KEM example, I need to make some minor changes in it to see it in the serial console. So these changes are being mentioned in the README itself as well. So I'm just going to add these changes here to see the serial.
Sorry, Brenda, that's an important point, is that what everything Brenda's doing here, which is spelled out in the README that comes with the pack. So the good news is you can follow along besides this video.
Yeah, all the source code being changed here is mentioned in the README steps. So you can use them here. And without adding this demo as well, you can still run and build the project. It's just you will not see anything in the serial output. Yeah. Adding this code here is the important for the serial console. And now I'm going to build the project. So the build is finished. We don't have any errors. So now to download it on the board, I'm going to do a debug. I'm just making sure my debugger settings is correct. And we'll download it on the board. It popped up the serial console. So here you can see KEM level 5 shared secret matches. So I ran the novel algorithms level 1, 3, and 5 for DS and KEM here, and the DS pass signature verification as well. So this is how you can use the package from STM32Cube inside the STMcube IDE to run the demo. I will hand over back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Brenda. All right. So as mentioned before, the base pack, which includes the 2 NIST standards, are available right from your CubeMX environment or these links. And if you want the premium, you can contact Quantropi, and Jay will talk a little bit more about that licensing in a second. But again, that was showing the base functionality, kind of like self-test, if you would. And again, it gives you great example code in both packs to show you how to exercise everything from key generation to encapsulate and decapsulate for key exchange, or key generation, sign and verifying for digital signature, all laid out for you. But some of the usage patterns include bootloader, right? So for verifying an image being booted, or to verify new software or firmware installs. And on the ST platform, we have one partner in particular, CipherBridge, with whom we have already done an integration, and so that's available in the market today. And if you were a quick student of our roadmap, one of the things we're also going to come out with shortly is an integration with MCU boot, so giving you options to upgrade your bootloader to a post-quantum signature, which is exciting. You can also use it for IoT to cloud communications, and that's where you would use our cryptographic functions in combination, for example, with embed TLS, and you can either use our OpenSSL provider that will give it to you, make available to you on the x86 or server side. But as Jay mentioned, a lot of the tech giants, especially the public cloud manufacturers, are headed towards supporting the NIST PQCs. So the great news is you put it into your device, and that device can then talk to a public cloud server or edge provider like Cloudflare. We can also look at it as an application level extension for signing data, encrypting the data, and you can run that over standard messaging protocols. For example, with one customer, we built it out for Azure IoT Hub, so you can have these quantum secure and quantum signed messages running over off-the-shelf standard Azure IoT. We've also recently done it for a customer in Europe with MQTT. So again, using off-the-shelf messaging capabilities, but adding this quantum security verification and authentication and security levels, a very simple add-on. So we think that's a very powerful way to overlay post-quantum security without having to change your entire messaging infrastructure. That's as a great security enhancement. Oops. And now I'm going to turn it back to Jay to quickly run us through the licensing and pricing options ahead of any final Q&A.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. And there's a couple of questions in the Q&A window I'm deferring to you, so take a look at those and we'll cover them after we finish with a couple slides. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as Mike talked about, we've got a couple of versions of the SDK. If you think about baseline, which is NIST standards only, and then premium, which is NIST standards plus Quantropi novel algorithms. That's the key main distinction. So there is a for free option that uses the MIT license. This is what is available through the STM32CubeMX environment. It's free. We will be providing updates and bug fixes to it for free. But the caveats are no source code is included. Support, it is unsupported for the free version. And so that's, kind of the free tier. Now, if you want to use that baseline version, but would like, support with it, then that is the production L1 version in the third column. The annual subscription cost is $15K. That $15K, think about it as basically per processor and application. So if you have a single application running on a single STM32 processor, then that's the $15K cost. If you run across multiple processors, that cost would increase because we have to support multiple configurations. And if you have multiple applications, not just a single application, then that cost would increase, and we can cover that in any discussions as needed for folks that are interested. But the baseline price point for a single supported application is $15K as an annual subscription. Then if you want the premium version of the SDK, because it's got the novel algorithms, it's got the PQRNG functionality, it also includes all the source code, that annual subscription cost is $25K. And then you can see there are different numbers of support incidents and response times that get packaged with that. Both of those configurations are available for a reduced price during development. So if you're starting development and want access and support during your development cycle, that's the second column, which is a $10K cost. And when you transition then into production, we'll prorate any version, any amount of that that's not used in a year, and roll it into what the production license cost is. So that's kind of the basic information on how the product is licensed and priced. There are two QR codes on this screen that I want to point out that take you directly to our website. Now, the one on the bottom is for the free baseline SDK. If you're going to access the free baseline SDK directly through your CubeMX environment, like we showed you, you don't need to do anything except use CubeMX, and you can access it directly and download it directly. And it pops right in just like we showed. If for any reason you want those artifacts in a .zip file, you can use this QR code. You fill out a couple fields on our website, you get a download link, and then you get a .zip file that you can use that has all the same artifacts in it. That doesn't have the pack file, it's just a zip file version, but we can distribute the pack files that way as well if you would like those. The top QR code is for a free trial of the premium version of the SDK that, again, has the novel algorithms and the PQRNG functionality. So we're running free trial periods for the premium version. If obviously you wanted to convert that free trial into something for production or development once the trial period is over, then you get into one of the paid pricing tiers. So if you have other questions on the licensing, you can feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them. And then I also wanted to point out or make a pitch for what's coming next, which Mike talked about a little bit, which will be MCU Boot. And so we know this is a very popular bootloader for a lot of folks. And we didn't talk about a lot about it during the slide presentation, but one of the most vulnerable attack surfaces in your IoT application is the boot process. And so if you had a choice on what to quantum secure first, most customers are doing firmware updates through a quantum secure bootloading process like you get in MCU Boot. And so we are working on a release 1 of MCU Boot. And again, we'll offer 2 flavors, a free version, which just includes the NIST standards with no support. There'll be paid support you can get on top of that, just like the SDK. And then there'll be a baseline premium version that also has Quantropi novel algorithms included as options for MCU Boot. If anybody is interested in working with us to beta test this functionality, reach out and feel free to contact us. We'll put Nick will put a email address in the chat window. We're actively pursuing beta customers that want to be involved in the process for MCU Boot and have early access to those first bits when they come out. And Mike, let's go to the last slide. Similar to how the SDK is licensed, again, MCU Boot will be licensed the same way. Free versions, development versions, and then different production licensing between the baseline version of the package and the premium version of the package. We're, again, actively under development with MCU Boot. We're trying to get our first beta version done before the end of this year, and we expect production-ready versions in the first quarter of next year for MCU Boot. So the timing here is not very long before we'll have this available and in market. Okay, let's flip it over to Q&A. We've got about 10 minutes left. I think there are a couple of questions we'll try to address in the chat window now during live Q&A. Mike, if you want to take the first one or the earliest one around protected memory and some certification processes, we'll go down from there.
Sorry, I don't know where you have to call it the question because I'm looking at the screen share, not at the thread.
Yeah, so I'll read it to you, no problem.
Okay.
So the question is, does the SDK use dynamic memory allocation? And will we be doing, is the library functional safety qualified for use in FUSA code bases? So 2-part question, the first around the memory allocation and the second around functional safety qualification.
So Brenda, do you want to answer about the dynamic memory?
Yes, we use dynamic memory allocation, yes.
So yes,
and
we
as
do
far, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
And we haven't done the functional safety test, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't done it, yeah. No functional safety, yeah.
Okay. So it's something we can, talk about the timeline for.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think it was, David, we can talk about the timeline for that depending on, how quickly you need it, but it's not something we've done with the library yet. Okay. Let's go to the next question. I'm just scrolling down here. Are there plans to port to other MCU vendors like NXP and Renesas or IoT providers like Express Wi-Fi? So obviously we love our friends at ST the most, and seriously are grateful for the partnership that we have from ST. As Mike mentioned, the code libraries are ANSI-C, and so they are very portable. Should you choose to use something other than ST, which we don't recommend, you can definitely use our libraries on other platforms. So we can talk more about that. The pricing is the same, works across platform, but I can tell you our best and closest partnership is with ST. The kind of integration we've done directly into their development environment to make it easy for you to build on the ST platform, is more than we've done with any other MCU manufacturer. But certainly you can use the libraries other places. Next question. Are the fundamental PQC algorithms used in the Quantropi PQC somehow compliant with the NIST standards, or are the Quantropi PQC algorithms proprietary? Yes, the Quantropi algorithms are proprietary. And so if you choose to use our novel algorithms, you definitely need to understand that for a couple of reasons. And first, I want to make it clear, and I'm sure Mike has said this, right? For customers that have the resources, right, and the processing and the memory capability to use the NIST standards, that's what you should use. That's why they were approved, and you should definitely use those as your first evaluation point. But we kind of fill this niche space that exists because we know that there are a whole lot of applications running on hardware that will be challenged given the compute and memory requirements of those new algorithms. That's why what we have, we think, is novel and proprietary IP, because we've figured out how to deliver those same pieces of functionality in a quantum secure way using far less resources. And a lot of people also ask us, why isn't that one of the standards choices? And the easiest and shortest answer I can give you around that is that if you remember my slide, that standards process basically started in 2017. Quantropi as a company didn't exist until 2018, and our algorithms weren't really finalized until the early 2020s. And so, there was a mismatch in the window for our ability to submit as part of the standards process. Now, I also said that there will be more algorithms that get standardized in the future, and NIST, we believe, will be opening up additional submissions and additional windows for that to happen. We are interested and excited to take part in that process. But the thing to realize is that those wheels move very slowly. And so any new algorithms that get submitted are likely 5 years or more before they would make it all the way through the process that NIST uses for evaluations. So brand new algorithms, are going to take some time to get approved and exist from a NIST perspective.
But let me add one more point, Jay. But importantly, there's nothing, even though our novel algorithms are novel, they're not secret. So they're peer reviewed. They've been in a number of tier 1 academic journals. We've had a number of academic partners that have collaborated with us on it. So there's because nobody likes secret crypto. You want to understand that it's been vetted and that you can understand the fundamentals of the math, and that the security proofs are well understood. And that is all, we're an open book on all of that. So that's something you can have confidence in as well.
Yeah, no, Mike, that's a great point. Okay, and then I think, Alex, you were also asking about Wi-Fi Express modules. So I can tell you, we have not personally done anything integrating our stuff into Wi-Fi Express, but we've had interesting conversations with a couple of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth providers, and we're kind of, going where customer demand takes us at this point, quite honestly, which is why you see us doing the work with Mbed TLS and MCU Boot. If there is a specific protocol or use case that you're interested in integration with, just please reach out to us, and we're happy to talk about it, because we're really trying to be as geared toward customer demand right now as possible.
And so I just saw a question pop up from Lisa as a follow-up about our academic publications. If you just email us, we'll send you Dropbox links that has all the academic citations in it. So rather than so we can get that to you, and you can read them. You can read the math at your leisure, because it's always good times.
Yeah. So then there's also a follow-up question from Alex on the SDK and its subscription licensing. So what happens when the subscription is ended, right? So it works the way a typical subscription does. We haven't encountered this, situation yet. I think, we are nimble and flexible. So let me just say, if you did the subscription, you build a bunch of applications, and then for some reason you weren't going to migrate to a different solution, but wanted to keep the application in market and continue to be able to use the technology, I think we would come to some arrangement for you to be able to do that. But as designed, it's an annual and yearly subscription payment. Let me just see if we've got other questions here. I don't see any additional questions. We've got 1 or 2 minutes before the webinar concludes. So if you have additional questions, please feel free.
There's a royalty question, Jay.
Yeah, okay. So again, this kind of goes back to licensing. So free and unsupported, is absolutely no cost, We will continue to maintain and update those libraries for new customers that want to have the latest version of the free version of the library. And so for the free version, it's under an MIT license. There is no cost, there's no royalty, but there's also no support, there's no source code or anything else. For the paid versions, those are the license prices that are quoted in the charts that we took a look at. And I didn't explicitly mention it, but that is not constrained by or measured by the number of devices that you have deployed on. It's basically for an application on an ST processor MCU configuration, So if you have a single MCU that you target from ST and you have a single application, those are the annual subscription prices that you would pay for the SDK, whichever version you choose. If you have multiple processors or multiple applications, that's where the costs would increase because multiple processors, we're supporting multiple configurations or multiple applications on our side. So those are basically per processor, per application prices in the charts.
Yeah, so not per device. We're not counting widgets.
Yeah, nothing per device. We don't really think people in the IoT space like to pay that way, so we do not license that way.
I think we're at the top of the hour, Jay.
Yep, I think we are. Oh, let's see. We got one last question. In the ST ARM family, what is the lowest power processor? Oh, I'm glad, Danny, you asked that question because we stated before that, we've already compiled for a number of different ST MCU and MPU platforms that were highlighted on the first slide, but we've also compiled for some pretty limited resource stuff on the ARM side. Mike, if you want to talk about that detail, I think I'll let you answer because I don't want to get it wrong. But we've gone down pretty low on this embedded side.
Yeah, so we've done Cortex M4 and we've looked at M0. But again, I would say if you have a particular processor in mind, let's talk about it because our footprint is small enough that we can squish into some pretty small spaces. So, but again, we're trying to be driven by customer demand versus just spraying and praying. So if there's a specific target processor in mind, let us know and we can communicate back to you how well we'd fit.
Yeah, and for us, it's literally a matter of days to do a recompile on a different processor that we haven't seen before, so we can do that very, very quickly.
Yeah. In fact, we had one customer came in with an exotic request. 2 days later, we shipped them a working version that we'd be able to benchmark in our own office before we sent it over, so they knew it would work when they got it.
Yeah, and from the ST side, the lowest power series would be the STM32U series, and the U5, I believe, was already highlighted on that slide that's already up and running on. And within days, you can get others as well.
Yeah,
100%.
So I guess in closing, thank everybody for attending. Mena, thanks to you and the ST folks for being fantastic partners. And for everybody in the audience, if you're not thinking about your transition to post-quantum security yet, you should definitely put it on your roadmap. And the fastest and easiest way to get started and just play around is now available to you directly through the STM32CubeMX tool. So we made that baseline version for free to get as many people as possible to start planning for these migrations, evaluating the algorithms. And as you saw in our roadmaps, there's a whole lot more stuff coming that will make your transition and migration even easier. So appreciate everybody coming to the webinar today. And like I said, we will follow up with links for the video and the PowerPoint presentation in the next 24 hours or so, you'll get that email from us with that material. So thanks everybody for attending.
Thanks, everyone.